Delbert Child Munsee was born on March 2, 1925, in the rural community of Paul, Idaho. It was a small farming town where life moved at the pace of the seasons and neighbors often felt like extended family. The open fields and wide skies shaped the backdrop of his earliest days.
Elva Augusta Child was born on July 14, 1887, in Ogden, Weber County, Utah. She was born during a period when Utah was still adjusting to rapid settlement, new communities, and growing infrastructure in the American West. Her childhood took place in a region where families worked closely together, shared responsibilities, and relied on one another. Daily life during this time was shaped by agriculture, community involvement, and the practical demands of rural living. Elva grew up at a time when education, family values, and self-reliance were emphasized in households across Utah. Children learned early to contribute, whether through household tasks, helping care for younger siblings, or assisting with seasonal work. Records from the region and era show that communities were closely connected, with neighbors, church congregations, and extended families providing support networks. This environment likely influenced Elva's early worldview and the way she approached responsibilities later in life. As she entered adulthood, Elva lived during a time when marriage and family life were commonly expected roles for women. On March 10, 1908, at 20 years old, she married George William Munsee in Shelley, Idaho. At the time of their marriage, George was 30 years old, making him about 10 years older than her. This marked a new chapter in Elva's life, transitioning from daughter to wife and eventually mother.
George Munsee was a hardworking man, deeply rooted in the rhythms of rural Idaho. He and his wife had 9 children in their bustling household, and Delbert was the 9th child. The Munsee home was filled with the energy of a large family, and those early years were shaped by the closeness of a big household. However, George's life took a difficult turn when he fell ill. Over the course of 2 years, he suffered from a spinal abscess that led to spinal meningitis and eventually paralysis. He passed away on September 5, 1926, when Delbert was just a little over 1 year old.
After George William Munsee passed away in 1926, Elva was 39 years old. She remained in Idaho, raising her children and managing the responsibilities of the household on her own. Nearly 3 years later, on February 28, 1929, Elva remarried. Her second husband was Parley W. Birch. Shortly after the marriage, Elva became pregnant. During her 8th month of pregnancy, she developed placenta previa, a serious medical complication. In the 1920s, before modern surgical options and safe blood transfusion procedures, placenta previa was frequently fatal. On October 28, 1929, at approximately 8 months pregnant, Elva Augusta Child Munsee Birch passed away. Her unborn child did not survive. She was 42 years old. Elva left behind her husband Parley and the children from her first marriage, including her youngest son Delbert, who was 4 years old at the time of her death. Her life remains documented through records, and her legacy continues through her descendants. With both parents now gone, his living situation changed. Historical records indicate that Delbert lived with and was raised by his older siblings. During this time, it was common for younger children in similar circumstances to remain within the family rather than be placed in outside guardianship. His childhood and early adolescence were shaped by these household arrangements and the shared efforts required to provide stability. Delbert grew up during the Great Depression, a period marked by limited resources and economic hardship across the country. Daily life required adaptability, practical skills, and cooperation among family members. A new chapter began. After losing both parents early in life and growing up in the care of his older siblings, Delbert reached a point where his life shifted in a new direction. This marked his entry into adulthood.
On December 29th, 1942, in Burley, Idaho, at just 17 years old, Delbert married Nelma Rose Fott, who was 14. The ceremony was performed by Reverend Ferris A. Dodd, with Waldo Fott and Bertha Morrison listed as witnesses. At the time, Idaho law permitted marriages at those ages with consent, and records show that young marriages were not uncommon in some rural communities where expectations, family structure, and culture differed from other regions of the country. For Delbert, this marriage represented responsibility, stability, and an early step into adult life. By 1943, the Second World War had become a defining force across the globe. The United States continued mobilizing thousands of young men to serve overseas, and communities across rural America felt the reach of the war effort. On July 22, 1943, in Pocatello, Idaho, Delbert Child Munsee enlisted in the United States military. He was 18 years old. His enlistment record lists his residence as Cassia County, Idaho, and his civilian occupation as farmhand, General Farms, work typical of the region and the era. His educational level was recorded as grammar school, which reflected the reality that many young men in rural areas entered the workforce early to support family needs. At the time of his enlistment, Delbert held the rank of private and was recorded as married. Like many who entered the service during the war, Delbert joined as part of the selectees, enlisted men, individuals brought into service through the National Mobilization System as the country expanded its military strength overseas. From the farms and small communities of Idaho, Delbert stepped into military service during one of the most significant global conflicts in history. This moment marked his transition from rural civilian life to the uniformed ranks of the U.S. Army during World War II.
Your country needs you.
His journey began at Camp Roberts, California, where thousands of young men just like him learned the foundations of soldiering: discipline, endurance, obedience, and resilience. But Delbert wasn't just any recruit. He volunteered for something tougher, something reserved for the determined and the fearless.
So you want to be a parachutist? Good. That means you have courage. But don't think being brave makes jumping a cinch. You're going to find out that there's a lot more to it than making breathtaking leaps out of flying transport.
He volunteered for the paratroopers. His advanced training continued at Fort Benning, Georgia, the birthplace of America's airborne forces. There, he faced grueling physical trials: long marches, obstacle courses, jump towers, and finally, real jumps from military aircraft. Every leap was a statement. I am willing to risk everything. That spring, Delbert returned home briefly on furlough, recovering from a broken leg, an injury that could have ended his airborne path. But it didn't. He healed, returned, and finished training. Soon after, he earned the silver jump wings that marked him as a United States paratrooper, one of the most demanding and dangerous roles in the Army. Those wings symbolized a soldier trained to drop into combat from the sky, ahead of the main force, often surrounded, isolated, and holding the line against overwhelming odds. After airborne school, Delbert was assigned to the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment. He joined Company F, 2nd Battalion, 101st Airborne Division. He now trained with the men he would fight beside. The regiment assembled at Camp Toccoa, Georgia, where Company F learned to move as a unit: long marches, weapons drills, and constant conditioning. The training was physical, relentless, and unforgiving. Trust was built step by step. Later, in 1943, the regiment moved to Camp McCall, North Carolina. There, training intensified. Night jumps, battalion maneuvers, live fire exercises. The work was no longer about qualification. It was about survival. By the end of the year, the 501st was ready. Delbert was sent to Camp Shanks, New York, the Army's final staging point before overseas movement. It was a place of transition. Men arrived as soldiers in training and left as soldiers bound for war. The days were filled with processing and preparation, medical checks, equipment inspections, final issue of gear. Every man was expected to be ready when the order came. There was waiting, too, time spent in barracks, time spent thinking about what lay ahead. Army leaders understood what that waiting could do, so Camp Shanks worked to keep men occupied and focused. There were opportunities for rest and recreation, organized activities, entertainment meant to distract, even briefly, from the crossing to come. None of it was meant to make the war seem easier, only to steady men before they boarded ships bound for Europe.
I'm telling you, hurry up and wait. That's all we do here.
Better than the alternative, though.
He carried everything he would need: his equipment, his training, and the weight of what was coming. From there, he crossed the Atlantic toward combat.
All right, men, move out. Get loaded onto those cars, double time. Next stop, the boats.